So we secured a unique panel that usually doesn't happen, of those silent heroes sort of working behind the scenes. They don't usually sit on stage, to chat about security, stability, and governance. So I am happy to call to the stage Ms. Emily Winkler, Neilson-Winkler, CEO of VALOP Group, Mr. Frantz Sawyer, Executive Director of the Amos Claudius Sawyer Foundation, Dr. Rashid Abdi, Research Director, Sahan Research Kenya, and Dr. Aiman Mansour, VP and Head of Business Development, MENA Menomadin Group, and our own moderator, Shiri Fein-Grossman, CEO of the Israel-Africa Relations Institute.
Yeah, okay. She whispered, short answered. No.
Yes or no questions.
Okay, so this is a special panel, and it's kind of embodies, I think, both the creation of VALOP, right, and the creation of the Israel-Africa Institute, which is actually founded by businessman and philanthropist Chaim Taib, who has been working in Africa for over 35 years, and together with Aiman, thought about how to build the Israel-Africa Institute, and it was really about having strategy along with economy and business, because they understood that it has to go hand in hand. So this is kind of the embodiment of our panel today, which is called Security, Governance, and Resilience and Practice. So across Africa and indeed globally, the line between governance, political stability, and economic opportunity has never been clearer. Where institutions are strong and transparent, economies grow and investors engage. Where governance falters, instability and risk multiply. Today's conversation brings together leaders and thinkers who have worked at the intersection of government, security, and development, not in theory, but in practice. We'll explore how good governance underpins stability, how security strategies can unlock growth, and how innovative partnerships from investigative intelligence, I learned that from Emily, to diplomatic engagement can build real resilience on the ground. So, since ladies go first, this is the rule. Emily, so I'm going to ask you, so you spent a lot of years uncovering how illicit financial networks and cartels distort economies and government systems. How does investigative intelligence connect to economic development and stability, and what roles does it play for investors or business looking to operate in Africa?
Awesome. There we go. That's a really big loaded question. When she sent it to me, I was like, that's how we're going to start? All right. So I think that it's an amazing way to start this panel, because when people throughout my career have realized that I work so much in Africa, they immediately think agriculture, energy, health. And I did start that way. Like, I really did think that I was going to go to Africa and bring amazing Israeli innovative solutions. And it didn't take long for me to sit in, I won't say which country, but inside of a meeting with a government that said to me, these are all amazing healthcare solutions. They're going to change the way that we look at the healthcare sector, but we can't possibly implement them. And at a very young age, I was slapped with the reality that Africa is faced, is that there's more politics, bureaucracy, and challenges under the surface for implementation than any innovative problem that we need to solve. There's solutions to everything. But that last mile that everyone's been talking about today of operations is really complicated. So I came back to Israel at some point very discouraged from these range of meetings, and I said, no, we can't settle for this. We have to create investigative intelligence to provide these governments with an understanding of who they actually have at the decision-making table, making these decisions that are not in their best interest. That's a really dangerous thing to do, apparently, I've learned. Nobody likes to uncover the bad guys. Nobody likes to talk about the things that were said on stage today, that countries have been infiltrated, countries have been abused, countries have been used. Money is given, but there's strings attached. Are we okay with those strings attached? Do we have to settle for those strings attached? And the simple rule when it comes to intelligence is you can't possibly fight what you cannot see. And so we, as a company, and VALOP have done what is kind of become known as ridiculous projects across the continent to expose who's actually at play. Who stands behind these companies? Who stands behind these concession agreements? Who are you selling off your national assets to? Who are you allowing to operate within your borders? And what is their true intent? Because just like it's been mentioned today, we all just want a better future for ourselves. And so we can't actually have a better future for our economies if we don't have control and resilience and stability in our economies, our societies, and our political systems. So how exactly investigative intelligence plays a role in the business sector, I firmly believe that no nation in Africa or elsewhere can actually be sustainable, sovereign, and resilient if they don't have control of their own economy. If you don't have food security, you don't have water security, you don't actually have national security.
Exactly. Thank you. So, Frantz, I'm going to turn to you. So, drawing from Liberia's experience, what lessons stand out about rebuilding governance structures that can sustain peace and stability and restore trust between government, citizens, and investors?
Okay. Thank you so much, Shiri, and my sister, Emily. I must say, I usually do not sit on a panel, so I may be a little bit nervous. So forgive me. But the topic, security, governance, and resilience, it resonates deeply to me and my family. My father, Professor Amos Claudius Sawyer, was an ex-president of Liberia, and I'm going to toot my own horn, but he was one of the brilliant minds of Africa in the governance and peace-building space. And he always used to tell us that after the storm, we don't just build the house, but we must assure our family that it's safe to come outside. So rebuilding structures is one thing. Restoring trust between government and its citizens is very important. His work in Liberia is a lesson to be learned on the continent. It is a continental blueprint for post-conflict governance. So my experience in Liberia, as you guys may know, Liberia has come from 14 years of civil war, but 3 successful democratic transition. We have to be proud of that. Very, very proud. So what does this mean? It shows that institutions building is not just on paper, but it shows that restoring legitimacy and trust between the states and citizen is very important. All right. I wrote down some notes, so forgive me if I'm reading it. I would argue that legitimate governance must emerge from a very important dialogue, a national conversation that should be derived from its citizens. In Liberia, the government practices decentralization. What does that mean? It means bringing the government to its people. In Liberia, there are 15 counties. The government has decided that in order, typical example, to get a license, usually to get a license, you have to go to the capital city. What this government has done is say, no, we're going to invest in bringing these basic services to its citizens in 15 different counties. That's what decentralization is all about, right? And also, it's sort of like watered down the imperial presidency in Africa, as we know. The president is the supreme, right? But decentralization tends to spread that eliminate some of those pending issues. So Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm turning to Dr. Rashid Abdi. So Rashid has been here all week in behalf of the Institute. I don't know, he's a celebrity when it comes to the Horn of Africa and national security. He has 500,000 followers on Twitter. And yes, and they didn't all like the fact that he's coming here this week. And let's just give him love for agreeing to come and not shining away from, not hiding the fact that you're here. So, we'll begin with the broader picture. We spoke about this week. When we look at the political economy of conflicts across Africa, particularly through the lens of the Horn of Africa, how does these dynamics connect, and what we discussed earlier today on supply chains, trade corridors, and financing models?
Thank you very much, Shiri, and I feel honored, privileged to be here among you, and also I'm thankful to hear brilliant minds, and I'm here to learn actually more than anything else, because economics and finance and investment is not my expertise. However, I think I care about the continent I come from. I do recognize many of the submissions that have been made this morning, that the future of humanity and the future of the world essentially hinges on the success of Africa. While the demographic curve is flatlining in many continents, that of Africa is rising. For the first time, we have a massive youth bulge in Africa, which is an immense potential to unlock Africa's economic potential, but also I think poses significant security, but also instability risks. So I will come to that, but before I come to that, let me slightly take a detour and explain a bit of my own personal experience. Shiri jokes once in a while and calls me Abul Banat, which means the father of girls, and it is true. I have 3 girls, and now I have a granddaughter also who is a girl. So basically, I am outnumbered. But one of the interesting things is that one of my my second born, at the age of 5, got expelled from school. And the reason she got expelled from school is because she was selling lollipops in school. I usually give her every week some kind of an allowance. So she goes and buys, with that allowance, she goes and buys a few lollipops, puts a slight profit margin.
Entrepreneur.
Yes.
A female entrepreneur.
And then she got expelled from school, and the reason was that it was indiscipline, and she was encouraging, she was encouraging behavior that was not allowed by the school, so she was expelled. So she came home crying, and the mother was very furious with her, and she, in our culture, it's normal. She had taken the belt and was about to whip her, and I came in and I said, wait a minute, you can't be doing that. This girl was expelled from school for simply selling lollipop. I think that was clever. Let's go to the teacher and I will explain to him. So I went to the headmaster and I told him, look, we have in senior classes, secondary school, we have commerce. We teach entrepreneurial skills. I think this girl here definitely has entrepreneurial skills. So, of course, she got readmitted. That same girl today runs her own business. So, 2 powerful things.
How much
One,
was the margin?
sorry?
How much was the margin?
The
Business development guy.
The lollipop
How was the margin?
was actually very tiny. She bought the lollipop for 5 shillings, and then she will sell it for 15 shillings. So basically, she made handsome profit.
Let's invest.
So, yes, the reason why I think I want to share these personal stories with you is that we missed at least from my perspective, the agenda that the future of Africa is also feminine. It's also about women and investing in women enterprise. Some of the best upstarts, and my compatriot is here. She's a great example. Women make fantastic, great leaders, and African women. I come from also an ethnic community known as entrepreneurial generally, so that explains my daughter's story. So, but if you see almost 80% of Somalia's economy or the Horn of Africa's economy, especially Somaliland and Somalia, it's largely informal. And they say something like 60% of the informal trade, informal business is actually in the hands of women. And so we must, I think, Israel looking towards Africa should also factor in that important, I think, dimension, that it is a young continent, but some of the emerging young entrepreneurs are female, and you need to invest in that. Another quick point. I have a pair of shoes which I'm proud of. I don't know whether some of you can see it. This is about 2 years pair of shoes. I love it, but you can't believe it. It's actually made in Kenya. It is designed in Germany, but made in Kenya. And it is an important reminder that Africa is no longer interested in partnerships that see Africa as simply a place for extraction and a place for simply raw materials. We are interested in economic value chain, value addition. And I think technology being passed, training, those are, I think, the skills. And Israel comes, I think, very much equipped. Turning back to you, I know I've taken...
Yeah, I had a question, but...
Right, yeah. I have taken a lot of time. My expertise is on geopolitics and the Horn of Africa. We live, unfortunately, in a time when there's a massive surge in economic tension, in geopolitical tensions. There is also a surge in conflicts. I think the latest statistics is that we now have probably 95 active conflicts around the world. So we must calibrate our economic prognosis and our economic projections against the reality that today we live in a highly dangerous and combustible world, and we must prepare for that. Israel, inshallah, is emerging out of a crisis and a conflict, and is now well positioned, I think, to project its economic interest. I am always very critical of the Israeli leadership because they have neglected, to some extent, that role. The Prime Minister of this country visited East Africa and parts of Africa. He's very fond of Uganda for family reasons. So he went there in 2016 and came back. Since that time, we haven't seen Israel actually become much interested in Africa. All of us this morning had this fantastic story of how Africa is future. But is Israel really doing enough to really take Africa seriously? Now there is a window of opportunity. Sometimes when you listen too much Al Jazeera, you tend to believe that the whole of Africa is hostile. And that is not true. I come from a Kenya where, yes, there is some, small fringe which makes a lot of noise, attracts a lot of attention and headlines. But if you look at, our young people are hungry for enterprise, for investment. They are hungry for skills and jobs and training. One of the key priority areas is education. Every study that has been made of Africa and Africa's future has linked Africa's takeoff to education. Israel is an educational power. Today, Turkey is running secondary schools in Africa, is providing, is competing with other countries, providing, educational degrees and also opportunities. And this is money as well. Africa, it's not just scholarships, free scholarships. There is an emerging middle class that feels that they can invest and send their children abroad. And Israel is not tapping into that market and it's missing it. East Africa and the Horn of Africa is unstable, is fragile, there are conflicts, and it's also attracting a lot of geopolitical competition. But just to close, I think Israel now has an opportunity to re-engage with Africa and to listen to African voices, to align its geostrategic interests with the, I think, the interests of Africa. And I'll stop here, Shiri. Thank you very much.
So, Aiman, wow. Having served for many years in national security policy roles and more recently in business development across Africa, how do you see national security strategy acting as an enabler of economic development and investment on the continent?
Thanks. Unfortunately, in the case of Israel, it doesn't. There's great disconnection between the national security interests of Israel and what Israeli companies or Israeli-owned companies are doing on the ground. Let's take, for example, the Horn of Africa. The Horn of Africa is strategic to Israel. Look at the problems that we have in Yemen with the Houthis. Look at the problem that we have with the increasing Iranian influence in that region. Look at the problems that we have with the increasing Turkish and Qatari influence in that part of the world. And what is the state of Israel doing in order to promote more action from the Israeli private sector in that part of the world? Nothing. We're not, to the best of my knowledge, we're not really that active in Somaliland. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't a lot of economic or private investments from Israeli companies or Israeli-owned companies in Ethiopia. Take a country like Chad, a country that made the decision to normalize relations with Israel in 2019. I personally was involved, as you well know, in this. We made a lot of promises to Chad. We made a lot of promises that the Israeli private sector is going to come in and help the country build something in Chad in terms of economy. What have we done? Absolutely nothing. Because there is no infrastructure in the state of Israel to support Israeli companies or Israeli-owned companies to work in Africa. So there is a lot of nice talk about we need to counter Iran, we need to counter the Turkish, we need to counter the Qataris, blah, 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 blah. But it's talk. We know how to kill bad people. And that's good. I'm the biggest supporter of that.
You're recorded.
No. I'll say it again.
Never allowed on stage.
I'll say it again. There are a lot of bad people who want to hurt the state of Israel, and they need to be killed, period. But we cannot summarize national security on that level. National security is more than just throwing bombs somewhere or surgical strikes somewhere. National security also has to deal with investments, economic activity, delegations, state visits, and we're not doing that. Absolutely not. Look at the Turks. They have 44 embassies in Africa. How much do we have? 12?
13, I think.
13.
Zambia, maybe
Okay.
14.
No, you're including Egypt in this, I think. In any case, let's not...
We heard Egypt is very African yesterday. It's another
Yeah.
discussion.
Anyway, they have 44, we have 13. The Iranians, a country that is suffering from a horrible economic situation, they have 24 embassies. Where are we? If we all understand, if we're all in agreement that Africa is the future, then what the hell are we doing? We're not there. So if you want our private sector, if you want Israel to protect its national security interest in Africa, then do something about it.
All right, Frantz, I'm turning back to you. So how can regional and international partners best support African-led governance reform in ways that strengthen institutions rather than create dependency? It's just external intervention, and we heard this from Rashid this week, can be very damaging, actually. Yeah, even alleged positive, and we heard some people mention some countries that are economically colonizing Africa.
Sure. Thank you for that question. External partners, I'm going to speak from the Liberian perspective. We're indispensable in Liberia's recovery. But the most important, meaningful progress came when there was a shift from directing to enabling local leadership. I think partnership must be catalytic, not custodian. Our partners should also focus on capacity building, not compliance. It's very important for our international partners to be fully aware that partnership does not mean prescription. Liberia is always open to working with all international organizations, but I think focus should be on empowering local organizations. I have to give kudos to Emily. For transparency's sake, we do work together on our asset recovery project in Liberia, and that shows what partnership really is. So.
I have to comment to that. You can't just go
Yeah, go ahead. But keep it brief because Healy is on my tail.
Will do. I love that when we got on stage, you were like, sister. So we are in Israel, so I'm just going to say this because today is all about relationships, and it's why we came together to do this conference. I've said for years, I don't have a network, I have relationships. And that's how we run the company, and that's how the people that we partner with. We make sure that that happens. And there's a very, very special thing in Israel. And now that you're finally here, you can see it, and all the partners that partner with the company. When we go through the military service, or everyone that has, you fight side by side with your friends that become your partners that become your brothers and sisters. And there's a bond that's created that's never broken. And it doesn't matter how many years go by. You'll always come back and there's a bond. And to embark in this type of work that this panel doesn't normally get on stage and talk about, there's a bond. We are fighting side by side. We're creating partnerships across borders, across the world, to be able to fight real evil that has come upon our countries, that has infiltrated and is causing us harm for different perspectives and for different reasons. But these types of partnerships is what we want to see come out of this conference with everyone, and to not be shy about it, to know that we're struggling, to recognize those challenges and create the partnerships that are going to lead to this type of relationship and that type of bond, because it's unbreakable. And all of our adversaries and all of the people that we have to deal with and with the project that we're doing, we only can wish that upon all of you to find that same thing.
Okay, so I'm going Rashid, this time shorter.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I do want, in Tel Aviv University yesterday, you mentioned how the economic policy of war, which I thought is very interesting, about each country owns a port basically in the Horn of Africa. So I want you to a little bit elaborate on that, but short, keep it brief, and then we'll let Aiman with some closing remarks.
Yes. If you look at today's geopolitics, and the geopolitics of the past, it's not very much different. It's all about competition for sea lanes, competition for markets. Those are the traditional, markers or indicators of competition. What you have today is the largest concentration of what we call middle powers since the World War II. So you have countries that have emerged all consider themselves as either middle or major powers, all competing for resources in Africa, markets in Africa. And because Africa is, as somebody mentioned this morning, is right in the middle of the globe, and actually recent African Union has asked for Africa's real size to be made clear. Clearly, Africa is in the middle of the globe. If this is a tiny rock that is spinning in this vast universe, Africa is right in the middle of it. And I think it connects Pacific's, Indian Ocean, but also straddles, especially where I come from, the Horn of Africa straddles a major maritime route that accounts for between 12 to 17% of all global trade. And we have seen an extraordinary competition for ports. And the UAE has been very much ahead in actually buying ports from Berbera down to Maputo. I think the ambition of the UAE is to have, sort of complete spectrum dominance of the east coast of Africa. Now, UAE brings a lot of resources that probably Israel doesn't have. But clearly, the resource for the future is also infrastructure. I remember somebody mentioned this morning, Solel Bone and HZ. These were companies that were major infrastructure companies, Israeli-owned, that were operating in East Africa. They have all disappeared. Israel is a very prodigious state when it comes to infrastructure, but there is very little Israeli, I think, presence in this competition for ports. Somaliland is a very great example of a country that has built itself largely because the port is very much linked to the economies. If you look at the Somali peninsula, you will find that each and every viable state or sub-state or sub-national from the national government is connected to a port economy. Bosaso is connected to the whole Puntland economy, but also beyond to the Ogaden region or Somali region of Ethiopia. Mogadishu's port serves not just the city, but also the hinterland, Shabelle Valley. Kismayo serves not just Jubaland, but also all the way to Garissa County in Kenya. So these important linkages between Africa's coastlines and access to ports is quite vital. The Chinese were very early on in recognizing that. By the way, if you look at history, the British were interested in Uganda. They were not interested in Kenya, but the only way they could access Uganda was to build the railway. So the railway is a historical mistake. But just to tell you that the old competition for ports and infrastructure is going to be the deciding factor in the coming years. And this is an area where I think Israeli companies' technical expertise will be necessary. And I could talk some more about the kind of model, but I think this is an area where Israel can play to its natural strengths.
Thank you. Okay, so Aiman, I don't know how to say it in English. So we're not going to buy ports in Africa, okay? That's not something we have that Israel could do. But with all your vast experience trying to, getting Israeli technology in Africa, what do you see? What would you? I'll put your policy hat on. So what do you think we should suggest? Now we have the Israeli private sector that can offer and to discuss these kind of geopolitical developments and national security situations that we're discussing.
I think that we need to focus on partnerships. Given the state of how things are in the state of Israel at the moment, and lack of policy when it comes to Africa, or lack of action when it comes to Africa, I think you need to at least seek partnership with like-minded states, such as the UAE. I think the UAE is the most strategic partner for Israel and for Israeli companies to work in Africa.
But they will ask, what's the value added?
Israeli technologies, Israeli know-how, experience, and the ability of the Israeli private sector to also deploy funds into projects that have potential to become bankable. We also need to look at the United States. The United States is becoming active in certain sectors of Africa. Not in all of Africa, but take for example the Lobito corridor. The US is very active there. We need to see how Israeli companies can partner up with US institutions like the DFC and others in order to work in such strategic projects, as well as in projects that are supposed to be announced in Western Africa. This is, in my opinion, what we can do at the moment and what we need to focus on. Otherwise, to wait for things to change here, we're going to miss the train by far.
Hili, do we have time to take a question from the audience or no? No. Anyone wants to ask 155?
See, this is Shiri. She asks, she gets a no, and then she does it anyway.
No, because Excellencies, if you have anything that you want to say. No? Okay. All right.
His Excellency.
No. Yeah? Leo, go ahead.
My name is Oren Pelek. I'm working for Somalia, not Somaliland.
Somalia.
President attaché.
All right.
My question to you.
To me. Should I go under the table? Sorry, yeah. Oh. Follow me. Thank you so much.
Okay,
I must follow you back. Thank you.
I don't have so many. Only 6,000
Yeah.
followers. Okay, I would say, put like this. You mentioned the different influences or the different interests in Somaliland. Directly, you mentioned China.
Right.
China is building the roads there and building airports. Actually, I was helping one of the project they had there in Puntland. But basically, you didn't mention Turkey. Can you please tell us more about the Turkish influence? Because I think it's really, really important. I don't know about Somaliland. In Somalia, it's...
Yes, Turkey would probably require another summit to just paraphrase one of the comments. But yes, Turkey has in the last 2 years positioned itself as the preeminent player in the Red Sea arena, but also in the Western Indian Ocean. Turkey, as you probably remember, is an imperial nation with a long imperial history. Erdogan doesn't make a secret of his imperial ambitions. Now some people call it neo-Ottomanism. But the way Turkey goes around Africa, you can see the imperial swagger, you can see the strength and the language and the rhetoric is all imperial. Now, they want to build, first of all, they want to gain what is called blue water expeditionary capabilities. The ambition of Turkey is to rebuild its navy to be able to project military hard power beyond its borders. The other ambition of Turkey is, if you look at especially the Somali Peninsula, but also East Africa generally, Somalia, Kenya, is right in the middle of the equator. If you are interested in space science, but also if you are interested in really projectiles or rocketry, this is an extremely, the best place on Earth to be conducting tests or launches. Because of, you are going to save on fuel. Also Somalia in particular is very, ideal because, first of all, sunshine, no clouds most of the time. Then you also have a vast sea into which you can throw the projectiles. Turkey is right now building, or in the process of building, probably underground facilities for launching ballistic missiles. During the Gaza war and the conflict with Iran especially, Turkey saw its strategic vulnerability and weakness. It does not have the kind of supersonic and long-range rockets that probably Iran does. And I think there is now a competition, and the only place, Africa has become a theater where I think Turkey is looking for locations. Turkey is also smart. It knows how to build soft power. Turkey came to Somalia in 2011 on the back of the major famine, and I remember there was an iconic picture that came from that period where Erdogan himself flew all the way to Somalia, Mogadishu, went to a camp where children who were emaciated, victims of the famine, were located, and there was a picture of his wife holding an emaciated baby. And he immediately went back to Ankara, called a pledging conference, and in less than, 1 month, roughly 300 million was raised. So Turkey projecting itself as just as an altruistic state. The soft power is immense. For example, there are roughly about 200 now schools. The fastest growing language in Somalia is Turkish. There are roughly 200, teachers who are providing free. Turkey now there are roughly about 12 or 20,000 Somali students who are being trained in Turkey. Ankara, the second largest city, commercial city, now has a big financial, commercial hub, which actually has replaced Dubai as the center for Somali businesses and transshipment. Turkey's aircraft, Turkish Airlines. When Turkish Airlines launched its Mogadishu, I think about, was it 2012 or 20? Many people thought the Turks were crazy. How do they do that? But they control the airport, so they control the security of the Turkish company. Bayrak runs the airport. They created a security environment. They were reliant on AMISOM or Ugandan security to keep the perimeter fence. They built a 5-star hotel right in the middle of the airport so that the expatriate, the pilots, all could be secured. And then they tapped into one of the largest, most lucrative aviation routes in Europe. About 2 million Somali diaspora live in Europe, mainly in North America, but also in Asia and many places. Istanbul has become a major aviation hub. So Turkey is not doing Somalis a favor. It is minting cold dollars very, very intensively in Somalia. And I'll stop here.
Rashid, thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Thank you, everybody. I'm not going to do any closing statement. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Haley, take it away.